Hey guys! So, this week you are to be looking at Chapter 6 in your book. This week my lecture isn't going to relate as much to the PowerPoint as it usually does. This time the PowerPoint focuses more in on oppression and the role of power with and the power without in minority versus majority groups. And so I think you can kind of read that for yourself within the chapter and identify with that through the PowerPoints. There are a couple of other issues that I'm not really going to touch on that the book talks about because, again, you can just read it for yourself, such as DPN or Deaf President Now. You guys have probably discussed that in some of your ASL or deaf culture classes, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Also, the deaf jokes in the chapter are really good. You should look at those. It's important to see some of the deaf humor just because, first of all, you probably will end up interpreting those jokes at some point. And secondly, just to understand that those jokes come from a place where there's some truth in them. It's just like sarcasm. You know, some people are sarcastic and they say they're just kidding, but there may be an element of truth in what they're saying, or at least they believe there to be an element of truth in what they're saying. And so it's good for us to know what some of the deaf perspective of interpreters or of their world is, just because there may be an element of truth there. They may have been taken advantage of before by interpreters, and we can't, I guess, deny that fact or try to dismiss it. So anyway, one other thing that a couple of you guys have brought to my attention, in looking at some of your posts on the message boards, I wanted to just do a quick reminder, and especially with our topic this week, that deaf people are not our only consumers. Remember, as far as the Code of Professional Conduct states, deaf and hearing, or really anyone involved in the interpreted situation, is a consumer. So whether it's deaf, hearing, hard of hearing, deaf-blind, it doesn't matter who the person is. If they're in the interpreted situation, they are a consumer. The only exception to that would be your fellow interpreter, if you had a team interpreter, and in that case, that person would be your colleague. At no point, as far as the Code of Professional Conduct is concerned, at no point is the teacher or the principal or the doctor or whomever considered your colleague. I'm not saying that in reality, if I work full-time for the school, that the teacher wouldn't be my colleague. However, to keep it clear as far as definitions for the CPC goes, so that you know which tenets apply to what situation, whenever the CPC says colleague, it only refers to your fellow interpreter. So, just a definition reminder there for when you're answering your ethical scenarios. Alright, moving on. One thing that the book talks about is just deaf people feeling like interpreters, or again, the hearing population are taking advantage of them. And sadly, again, that comes from a place of truth. It's not that all hearing people are bad people or all hearing people are out there to get deaf people. That's not true. You can't stereotype anybody and say that. But that fear comes from some truth. It's based in some truth. And so a lot of times it is looked upon as though hearing people are just in this to benefit or profit from deafness or from ASL. You may get some suspicious glances when you first go to some of these socials, when you first start going to some of the ASL or deaf socials. And, you know, I've been there. I know exactly what you're going through. And I know what it feels like to be kind of shunned or rejected for a while, but the truth of the matter is if you stick it out and you keep going and you show your persistence and you show your tenacity, you show your heart, that's really what they're going to see. They're going to know the intentions of your heart. And I know that sounds cheesy, but it's just true. Then after a while, they're going to start to say, hey, you know, that chick, she keeps, or that guy, he keeps coming to all of the socials. He's sincere about this. He's not just coming to get his credit for his ASL class. Because honestly, that's probably what they think you're there for until they see you repeatedly. And then they're like, oh, this person really is trying to learn the language and really trying to do a good thing, not just trying to get credit for a class or not just in it for the money or whatever. And the truth of the matter is I mean, deaf people used to think that about interpreters when we made, like, nothing. And now we make a lot more, and so, you know, that problem has been compounded, or that thinking process, at least, is much more in that direction. For that reason, I think that it's really important that we contribute to what I call the pool of reciprocity. It's not just me. A lot of people refer to it as the pool of reciprocity. There's this pool of reciprocity, which just means, you know, you have given me so much that I'm going to put back into this and give to you. And sometimes it's maybe even a pay-it-forward situation where maybe I don't give back directly to that person, but I give back to the community in some way, shape, or form. And so one way that that happens is I consider my deaf friends to have taught me ASL. I mean, God bless my ASL teachers, God bless the college for all of the education I got from it, but the honest truth is the bulk of my education came from the deaf community and my teachers, and I as a teacher would be the first person to tell you guys that. You're just not going to learn sign language without really getting out there and just digging your heels in and trying to learn by socializing. That's true with any language. And so, you know, I feel like I have gleaned so much from my deaf friends, so much vocabulary, so many just idiosyncrasies of the language and the culture that I've been able to, I make a living off of that now. I mean, I can't deny the fact that that's how I make my paycheck. I make my paycheck from knowing sign language. And it's not even my language. I mean, it's from knowing sign language and English, to be fair, because I am an interpreter. I have to know at least 2 languages. But, you know, I feel like they've given me so much, and they didn't get paid for doing that. They've given so freely of their time and effort and knowledge, and I benefited from that. And so henceforth, every opportunity I get, as long as it's not taking away jobs from interpreters, I will try to do some pro bono work for my deaf friends. You know, I have some friends who live in rural areas and they can't get high-speed internet for VRS, and so sometimes I'll go out to their houses, and if they have some business calls and stuff that they need to make, I'll interpret their phone calls for them. Or and here's one where some interpreters would disagree with me and say that I am stealing jobs, but again, it's not what would Lael do, but I feel like I have backing for what I do. There are some of my deaf friends who, they want to get their foot in the door at a company and want to interview, but they don't want to put down that they're deaf, and they don't want to already have a knock against them by having the company hire an interpreter for them for their very first meeting. And so I have, for quite a few of my deaf friends, gone to their initial interview and interpreted for them just so they can get their foot in the door, and so that somebody can see the skills that they have before they say, okay, now if we have business meetings or if we do this, I'm going to need you guys to hire an interpreter for me. It's not something I would continue to do throughout their career, because obviously at that point the business really does need to foot the bill of that, but just to get their foot in the door. And I have some people that will disagree with me and, oh, the company should be paying for that, and blah, and I can't deny that that's probably true, but the reality of it is, illegal as it may be, they're probably going to be discriminated against if they don't at least get their foot in the door and people can just see them shine. And so, you know, I'm probably going to get flaming arrows thrown at me for that, but it's the truth. Anyway, we're going to continue talking about that on the next video. I just wanted to start that discussion. That's pretty much it. Thanks.